Welcome to MCN and a series of videos where we look at bikes that MCN staff actually own. Now, you've seen us wax lyrical about our long-term test bikes before, which we only get to keep for a year, but a lot of people who work with us have spent their hard-earned money on their own motorcycles, including Chris Newbigging here. Hello, mate.
Morning.
And this is his Ducati. Now, you may know Chris from being editor of Performance Bikes, editor of Practical Sports Bike, and he's now head of content at MCN. So, what I'd love to do right now is just sit and stare at this and maybe stroke it, but we're here to talk facts, aren't we? So tell us a little bit about what this bike actually is.
So this is a 2000 model 996 by Posto, or rather it was. If you're a bit of a Ducati now, you probably see the bits that are wrong, but single seat, exhausts, white number boards painted on. It's kind of a knockoff of an SPS or an R model, really. But yeah, underneath it's just the base model 996. But
I mean, it's quite hazy when you're talking about Ducati models. Obviously, it started with a 916. So when did this, what were the years of production on this bike?
So this was 99 through to 2001, and then the 998 came in, which was similar sort of shape.
Yeah.
So this is more closely related to the 916. So essentially it's just greater capacity. It's still very similar. But the way kind of Ducati worked in the 90s, if you recall, they do the homologation bike off the back of their race bikes, and those improvements would filter down. So this was, well, so 94 was the first 916, and by 2000, kind of a lot of that sort of knowledge had filtered down, and they'd made improvements, mostly to reliability actually, which was a bit of a problem for them at the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a nice sweet spot. It still looks like the early ones, but it's a little bit better and a little bit more reliable.
Yeah. So this isn't a 916 from the bad old days where it would leave you stranded. It's got more modern.
No, it's only left me stranded once.
Okay.
So that's pretty good in 5 years. So.
And it's got the new Ducati logos on, hasn't it? And the new.
Yeah, so that was sort
that
of a year or so after the Castiglione group, the sort of creators of the 916, if you like, they moved on, sold it to what were they called, Texas Pacific Group.
That's
and
right.
they brought in the new branding, which kind of Ducati still have really.
Yeah.
So it's kind of that style really, but yeah, like I say, the rest of it is still as Tamburini intended really.
Yeah. And after this came the 998, and then it finished, and then it was
999,
wasn't it? Yeah. How long have you had this?
5 years now.
Yeah.
And I bought it from my dad actually, and he had it for 4 years before, so I've known it for quite a while. He bought it from a guy who'd got a big collection of these and some really eclectic stuff. He got one of those big American sort of billet engine custom frame choppers with forks like that, and some really trick stuff, but he kept them all outside under a carporting, including this. It was a strange bloke to buy a bike from, but he looked after it, and it was, I mean, there's a few little bits of kind of corrosion that are a bit abnormal, but otherwise it's lovely, well cared for bike.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
So if you don't mind me asking, how much did you pay for it, and what do you reckon it's worth now?
Well, part of the reason I bought it is because my dad offered me a deal. He was moving on to 1198. He fancied some similar but with more power, and obviously firstborn son, I kind of called dibs on
more,
it.
obviously.
Yeah, well, yeah, but no, he sort of basically, I gave him the $5,000 that he'd paid for it a few years before.
Wow. So
it was one of those. I wasn't looking for one at the time, but I was like, I can't pass that up. Otherwise, the prices will go through the roof, and I won't be able to buy one again.
And have the prices gone through the roof now?
They've gone up, certainly. I mean, I'm not quite sure what this one is exactly worth because it's been messed around with sort of a lot of Ducati sort of collectors like standard ones, but I'd say it's probably 7 or 8 at a guess.
I mean, that's still relatively cheap, isn't it, for an icon?
It is, yeah. I mean, it's especially, I mean, what's the new Panigale V4S these days?
27?
Yeah.
Wow. And how do you use it? Where do you ride it?
Not as much as I'd like, really. I bought it, and then shortly after decided having another child would be a good idea. I don't know who convinced me that was the way forward, but so it's kind of sort of high days, holidays, and sunny rides to work. Just whenever I get a few spare minutes, I grab it and go.
Yeah. What about the mileage on this?
It's only 13. Right. I've put sort of about 3.5 of those on, I think. Yeah. Something like that.
And the big question, as you touched on it earlier, is reliability. So what are they actually like to live with? Worry about it?
Yeah, I don't worry about it too much. As partly because when I was on Practical Sports Bikes, part of that magazine's kind of remit was to work on your own bikes and improve them and ride them. And so I kind of went through it and I researched all the problem areas and kind of made sure they were good. I had the valve clearances checked, upgraded all the starter cables to some, what are they called? Super start cables, I think they are, which just helps alleviate certain issues. So rather than waiting for it to break, you kind of do the preventative sort of cures.
Yeah.
And sort of touch wood. It's been pretty good. The only breakdown I had, which I kind of alluded to earlier, was the first time I rode it any distance actually. There's a nut holding the generator on, and they were incorrectly made from the start. And at some point it's had that problem, it's rattled around and it damaged all the stator windings of the charging system. And it hadn't broken then, but it sort of waited until I bought it and decided it was going to pack up because it was damaged. So, but that was a relatively easy fix. And otherwise it starts every time I ask it to, and it's been no bother. Just belts every couple of years and an oil change.
Amazing. So it's not quite standard, is it? So
no, it's not. It's
front to back. What's different on this bike than a standard 996?
Right, so front to back. So the wheels are the wrong colour for a start. They should be the same grey as the frame. Somebody's done them black.
Right, they're not lightweight wheels. They're just
no, they're just the standard sort of cast aluminium Marchesinis that it came with. I had the forks and shock rebuilt a few years ago by K-Tech, so they're not drastically changed, but they're kind of sprung correctly.
And what are they? Are they too stiff or too soft?
No,
Standard?
they. This bike had progressive springs on it, which, as far as I'm concerned, on sports bike are the devil's work. You can't get a setup because the spring rate is changing all the time. Yeah. So it just went back to a set of K-Tech linear springs, and front and rear, and they just kind of refreshed it and had a little fiddle with a shim stack at the front and a little bit at the back as well, and just kind of made it nice. I mean, it is really firm. You're not going to get around that, but that's not something I wanted to take away from it because I don't think it would work if it was kind of too soft and cushy. That's not what this bike's about. It's not why I bought it. It's not a daily commuter. So then from
brakes standard.
Brakes are standard. The discs are the wrong one for this. It got one that was warped, so I picked up a set from I think it was a 998R that had been turned into a race bike and had been sat on the shelf for years. So they're a slightly different design. They're a little bit lighter, but not an upgrade as such. SBS brake pads as well.
Okay.
And then motor, all standard internally. I mean, as you can see from the outside, it's got a different air box on it and different intakes, which opens up a little bit, different air filter. Power commander, which I had mapped by BSD, who do all our dyno work for MCN. He's done a really nice job, and it makes 119 horsepower and 73 pounds of torque.
93 horsepower, is it? And what's it weigh? Ish.
I know exactly. It's 211 kilos full of fuel.
Okay.
So about 10 kilos more than the sort of modern litre bikes, which isn't too bad, I don't think.
About on par with a V2 Panigale, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit heavier.
Yeah, touch heavier. Yeah. Sort of more torque in the mid-range, but less peak power there. About 145, 150 these days, aren't they? So. Then the shock is non-standard. It would have had a Shora standard. Somebody's fitted the Olins from an SPS or one of kind of the higher spec models.
Yeah.
I've dropped the gearing by I think 7 teeth at the rear and 1 at the front. So, I mean, you know, you've ridden lots of Ducatis in your time. They always come sort of geared for 280 miles an hour, don't they? And this was no different. I actually worked it out, and the gearing was good for 193 miles an hour, which is you're never going to do if you throw the damn thing off a cliff, would you? So,
no, exactly.
Gearing it down, it just feels like a Japanese bike where the ratios are correct.
Yeah.
And it actually increased the top speed. It's actually because it was so overgeared before it wouldn't pull sixth. So turning only half system on it as well, just silencers, basically standard headers. And,
loud? Set off car alarms?
Loud-ish, but I did a sort of Ducati UK track day a few years ago, and the Panigales there, and the standard Panigales drown this out as soon as they start.
Oh, really?
So it's you can, if you roll the throttle, you're not too antisocial.
Yeah.
I don't think so. Yeah.
And then bodywork-wise, I see there's a lot of carbon on it. Is that a carbon seat unit?
It is a carbon seat unit, yeah. I think it's Sebimoto, something like that. It was on it when I got it. Technocell seat pad, which were, if you remember, the sort of Ducati course bikes from the 90s, they always had little Technocell stickers. That was one of those little details that made them. So that's nice to have. Carbon airbox, intakes.
This is the airbox?
Yeah, it is, yeah. Yeah, the tank just seals down on the top, and it's all the throttle bodies and air filter under there.
Carbon infill panels, infill panel there.
Yeah, I think that's kind of it.
And then the paint job, because it wouldn't have had white number plates originally, would it?
No, and at some point this bike was yellow. Somebody obviously decided they preferred red, so I'm not quite sure what the history is, but I think all the panels, I think somebody's exchanged them wholesale, so I'm not sure whether somebody just painted the nose fairing and decided to have the white number board as well. Yeah. But kind of whatever, I like it.
So you ride a lot of bikes for your day job, a lot of modern bikes. So what's the performance of this by modern standards?
I kind of found that out sort of directly last year. Like I say, the Ducati track day, and most of the bikes that turned up were less than 5 years old. So and I went out, fast group, first session, and there were 10 Panigale V4s in front of me, and they were all track prepped, and I was sitting there going, oh no, I'm going to get mobbed here, you know. But the great thing about this, because it's obviously cable-driven throttle and it's been mapped nicely as well, you know exactly what you're doing with it. There's not a computer kind of interfering in the middle. It's not that I'm a Luddite or anything. I love 220 horsepower superbikes as much as you do. But you know exactly where you are with this, and because it's a real sort of mid-rangey delivery, it sort of goes from 5 or so. You come out of a corner, especially tight ones, and it just digs and goes like that. And actually, particularly with the V2s, you know how revvy they are. This thing gets the leap on them, and it sort of takes till sort of 4th, 5th gear before they really start pressing home that top end advantage. And even a V4S, obviously you open the throttle and ask for 50%, and it goes, right, I'm not sure he wants that because you're at this lean and this rev, blah blah blah, and it makes a calculation. And even those, they don't get away immediately, and obviously they then pipe a 200 odd horsepower in and clear off into the distance. But it holds its own, and then there's no ABS either, which is kind of something that's overlooked. So it's nice direct brakes, and I've spent time setting up the suspension on top of kind of the work that K-Tech did, and it handles kind of track work really well. It's got loads of ground clearance as well.
So confidence inspiring. It doesn't feel like an old bike.
No, it doesn't. Like I said, I was editor of Practical Sports Bikes and rode lots of retro stuff, 80s, 90s stuff really, and I enjoyed lots, and I have a lot of it as well. But this is so much more direct than pretty much all of it. It's still relevant in its own way, and okay, it's a cranky old thing, and it kind of takes ages to warm up, and it's got lots of little but yeah, when it comes to it, it can kind of still do the business. And I've put some really sticky tires in the Conti Race Tac 2s, and it genuinely makes use of the grip. Like I say, it leans for England, and
you can just use everything it's got.
It does, yeah.
It talks to you.
Yeah, it's a really satisfying thing, and I wrote about this at the time. I did a session on a Panigale V4 straight after this, and okay, it's incredible and amazing, but you'd have to spend ages dialing in the electronics, the suspension, and all the things that you can fiddle with on them, and yourself, in honesty. 'Cause it takes a while to get your brain on that level to
100%.
deal with it. And
they're fast bikes, aren't they?
And I don't think that would necessarily be any more. It'd be faster, of course, but I don't think it's more satisfying. This thing, whether it's road or track, every time I ride, I just go, love it. You know, it's such a the owner's satisfaction is so high with it. Even though I don't do many miles, and it didn't do anything during COVID, and sort of missed out a few other times, but generally do about 1,000 miles a year. That's all. That's sort of on top of testing duties and everything else. That's the only time I get for this. But I treasure every single one. And even if I'm not using it, I open the garage door to get the kids' bikes out or something. It's
it's amazing. And obviously completely analogue by today's standards. No quick shifter, no traction control, no wheelie control. Do you miss any of that?
No, not really. I mean, a quick shifter would be nice. It's a little bit sort of slow-witted, changing gear sometimes, but I mean, it's an old bike and it wasn't designed for a quick shifter, so I've kind of left it alone rather than lunch a gearbox.
Absolutely. So, you talked about what this bike's like on track. Is it a nice bike to ride on the road, or is it slightly awkward, slightly quirky, slightly uncomfortable?
It's definitely uncomfortable and awkward if you're going slowly. But I just avoid towns and villages as far as I can. You don't buy this and go through the centre of London unless you're kind of some sort of masochist, really. I mean, I've changed the handlebars as well. That's something I've forgotten. They are sort of reduced offset ones, so they're a little bit closer and they're also a little bit flatter. I'm sort of 6 foot tall and arms like an orangutan as well. So they're a bit more suited to me. So it's okay. I can deal with it.
So as a riding experience on the road, you've got this and you've got a Panigale V4S 2023 model, all the bells and whistles. Which one are you going to take?
This.
I agree.
So I find not just the Panigale, I'm not going to pick on that, but because they are obviously they're designed to produce a lap time, aren't they? Their performance envelope is so far away from what you can realistically do on the road. You don't ever tap into them. You're not touching the sides, are you? Whereas this thing it's kind of that instantaneous grunt, and it handles quite well, and you're still not using its capability. You're a bit close to it, and it gives you a bit more back. There's a bit more sort of feel rather than it's an S1000R or something. Just going, what are you doing? Why are we going this slowly? It's almost like it's mocking you, whereas this is not quite doing that.
No. In terms of the sort of the emotion of these bikes are all about Italian emoziale, aren't they? And with your T-shirt there, the foggy.
Yeah, I've gone
obviously
brand
this
appropriate
is
today.
linked to the foggy days, and you would have
Yeah,
been,
that's kind of the inspiration, really. I mean, I think it's '92. My dad started taking me to World Superbikes as some bloke from Blackburn was starting to do the biz.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was sort of 4 or 5 then, and it just captivated me. And it kind of, and then obviously the 916 came out, and he had that massive battle with Scott Russell and various others down the years, and I loved it. I sort of walked to school every day, and I'd tell my friend, "You're Scott Russell," and I'm fogging. We'd be running, and I'm making all the noises, and that's just never left me.
No.
And I really remember the first time I saw one of these on the road, of going on a holiday to Cornwall or something, trying in the back of Dad's car, going somewhere. It was roadworks, and the inside lane was kind of empty but coned off. And I just heard a bum, 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 bum coming up, and it was a 916, and he then dipped through the cones after the sort of road, gave it a big handful. I was like, and it went at that, blah, blah, blah.
yeah,
Like
exactly.
just these things, they stick with you, and I always wanted one.
Yeah.
And yeah, here we are, I've got it, and not letting it go anytime soon.
Yeah, and these are the days when you saw one of these on the road, it was properly special. Nowadays, Ducatis are fantastic bikes, aren't they? But they're a little bit more mainstream. There's much more sort of the PR attached to them is very polished. You know, when you see one on the street, it's not as awe-inspiring as when we saw these back in the day.
No, well, the company's obviously owned by the Audi Group these days, and they're very commercially minded, and they've sort of changed Ducati away from sort of real passionate kind of engineers, which is what they were. I mean, when Tamburini was designing these, one of the ways he helped develop the aerodynamic package, he went off out in the rain for hours up and down the autostrada. When he came back, he had a look at how you get the sort of dirty lines where the wind's pushed the dirt over it. He had a look at it just to see what it was doing.
Yeah.
And he had everybody in the design studio sit on it, and they worked out the ergonomics. And I think there's bits like this kind of cut out here. That was one particular bloke had big arms and he was crashing his elbows. Just
Wow.
They really thought about it, and but something that's overlooked with these is how easy they are to work on. They designed it to be a race bike and to be adjusted and improved and fixed as well. So from the start, part of the design was really easy to take apart.
Yeah.
And so I do all the work on this myself, because it's just even things like belts, which people get really afraid of, that it's so easy to do, and you save so much money over a dealer.
Yeah.
I mean, the only fasteners for the bodywork, there's one bolt to the back of the tank, and then the mirrors hold on the nose fairing. Everything else is quick release, even the seat.
I was going to ask you about running the thing. You know, it's an expensive bike to run, but if you're doing the work yourself.
Yeah, so it's due some belts now, so I've got some aftermarket ones, because inevitably somebody comes along and goes, we can do that better. So I've got some California Cycle Works belts to go on it, which are cheaper than Ducati ones, and apparently built to a sort of greater standard as well. Right. So they're going on soon. Oil, well, it takes 4 litres of oil just like everything else does.
Yeah.
And the filter, and it's not bad really. The air filter's washable, so that doesn't need changing. It's not been too bad. I mean, I don't do many miles, obviously, so I'm not sort of getting it through like a year-round commuter. But
no, exactly.
No, it's not. And actually, some of the parts as well, because the Italians, they don't tend to sort of build parts specifically like the Japanese do. So Honda will bring out a new Fireblade, and it'll have its own filter that only fits that bike. Whereas this is the same as BMWs, Triumphs, cars as well. So you can pay 30, 40 quid for a Ducati one with a little stamp on the side, or you can buy one for 15 quid from a BMW dealer, which is exactly what I've just done. So it's such an iconic shape, isn't it? That when they brought out the 999, it just bombed, didn't it? And they had to quickly bring out the 1098, which is a modern version of this, really, isn't it? It is, yeah. I mean, even the Panigale, you look, and there's still sort of hints of this kind of shape. But during development, it didn't have under-seat pipes, did it? It didn't have a single-sided swing arm, I don't think. They went back and forth. Yeah. So at one point, I wrote a big feature about these and spoke to, I forget the guy's name now, but he was involved in the development, and they went back and forth, and they'd already designed it with these. So everybody says, oh, the NR 750, they just copied it. Right. They didn't. Okay. But apparently what did happen, that confirmed that was the right idea, and they went with it. Little known fact about Tamburini's, he was part of Bimota. He was the TAC in Bimota, wasn't he? And the Suzuki powered SB2, that was going to have underseat exhausts in 1977. Oh, really? If you ever look at one of those, they're quite obscure things. You probably have to Google one rather than find one. But they've got 2 big indicator holes in the tailpiece, and that's where the exhaust was going to come out.
Wow.
They just couldn't get around the heat problem, so they canned it.
Yeah.
So he had the idea first, anyways. Is
Yeah,
what I'm trying to say. So, and actually, if you ever look at an RC30, this sort of shape here is very similar,
Very
but higher.
similar. Yeah.
And apparently, when the RC30 came out, he was really inspired by that. And even things like the vents and the fairings, they're very similar, and the rake of the nose. Obviously, it's not a direct rip-off, but it's very similar. But he just thought that was the best-looking bike Japan had ever produced, apparently. And
Wow.
that informed some of the decisions he made, because they spent a long time on this. I think it was 85, the Castiglione brothers took over Ducati and brought Tamburini in to start developing bikes. And the 888 was always, 851, sorry, was almost knocked out. And they knew they needed a real kind of signature bike, something that was kind of stamped Ducati's back, and this is what we're about. And they started work on it about the same sort of time, so they spent a lot of time sort of cogitating on it and deciding what they were going to do, while they just had the 888 and 851 just doing the business in World Superbikes.
Yeah.
So this was a real labour of love for them, and kind of shows, really.
It does. And the quality of it, amazing, like the plastics and the paint, it's just beautiful.
Yeah. It's, there's no kind of ugly extent. I mean, take off the fairing, there's wires and hoses everywhere. It's a bit of a plumber's nightmare, as they say. But they really paid attention to detail, and that was, I mean, for me, the 999 was obviously challenging in its way, but they didn't put that same thought into it. Things like sort of where the subframe is on those, there's lots of bits exposed and welds and funny brackets and wires, whereas everything's hidden on this, really. There's nothing ugly hanging out, really.
So you say this is a keeper. I mean, if in a nutshell, what is it about it you love so much?
It's really shallow, but the noise gets me. I mean, I live sort of a mile and a half from the first bit of dual carriageway that brings me to work, and every time I wind it on there, just that it goes right through me, you know.
Yeah.
And it genuinely is a big part of it. But I mean, like I say, the performance is still relevant. It looks great. It's pleasurable to own. I sort of take it apart over the winter and grease suspension linkages and things like that. It all just comes apart so well, because it was designed to do that as a race bike. They knew they were going to have to work on it. It was going to get crashed and fix it. So it's just built to do that.
Yeah.
And so every part of the ownership experience it's just so satisfying. And that's the word I keep coming back to, is satisfying. It just is in every way. And even when it broke down, I just sat aside the road and looked at it and went, oh, well, that's why I've got breakdown cover, you know.
Exactly, yeah.
Don't worry about it.
Every rise and occasion.
Yeah.
I see this in the car park often and just so jealous. I'd love to have a go one day.
Yeah, you're more than welcome.
I tell you what, probably everyone wants to know is what it sounds like.
Yeah.
What do you reckon? Giving it a little tickle?
Yeah, go on. Start. Don't show me.
Yeah, will it start?
So there's another little detail. It's got there's a little button on the bottom of the throttle for the fast start. So rather than having a lever or something like that, it's
that's right.
hidden. Anyhow.
That just takes you right back, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, go on.
I was going to say, I still don't think there's a better sounding twin. I mean,
No.
I'm extremely biased, and there'll be Aprilia and Honda SP1 owners going, oh, you're wrong, but no, for me, this is just so emotive.
This is from back in the days where there was no sound deadening around the engine, no cats, no Euro 5, nothing. It's
no.
The engines themselves are quieter now, you know, let alone the exhaust and everything.
Yeah. I mean, obviously these have got the dry clutch as well. I mean, this one's recently been replaced, so it's not as rattly as it could be. But some of them sound like sort of a metal barrel full of spanners.
Exactly. That's brilliant. Well, thank you very much for showing us around.
You're more than welcome. You should have a go on it at some point.
I'd love to. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned for more videos like this coming up very soon.